Welcome to Movie Recap Light. Today we will show you adventure sci-fi film The Martian. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. In the not-too-distant future, where the crew of the Hermes is seen, which consists of Commander Melissa Lewis, botanist Mark Watney, IT whiz Beth Johansson, pilot Rick Martinez, flight surgeon Chris Beck, and navigator and chemist Alex Vogel. Mark Watney, being the botanist, is gathering samples for analysis as the other members does their respective tasks. As the chit-chat between Mark and Martinez on the radio increases, Commander Lewis tells to shut off their radios. As the crew is gathering samples, Johansson informs the crew that a storm is developing and asks the crew to immediately return back to the HAB. Commander Lewis issues the order to cancel the operation due to the storm's severity and strong winds. The team immediately moves towards the MAV, the vehicle that will return them to the orbiting Hermes, while Mark Watney argues for waiting till the storm comes. However, the crew commander disagrees with Mark's decision and orders to abort the mission. As the storm grows larger, they are encircled by strong winds and sand gusts. As they prepare for their emergency departure, to their shock, Watney is struck by a piece of a satellite dish and knocked out of the crew's line of sight. Despite Lewis' best efforts, the others are unable to locate Watney since they lost the signal with him due to extremely low sight and an extremely powerful storm. Without Watney, the commander orders the crew to get back into the MAV. The crew inside the MAV hopes to get signal from Watney, and to their failure, Martinez informs that the MAV is tipping off and he needs to launch the MAV immediately, and to her heavy heart, Commander Lewis orders to launch. Martinez barely manages to prevent it from falling, but the launch from the planet is successful. While the Hermes crew is successful in departing Mars, meanwhile on Earth, Mark Watney is declared dead, according to NASA Director Teddy Sanders, who at a press conference confirms his demises. But back on planet Mars, Watney wakes up after the storm has passed. With a very critical level of oxygen, he barely manages to pull himself off the heap of sand, and he returns to the habitat station since he is losing oxygen quickly. A portion of an antenna that impaled him still sticks out of his abdomen. Only enough blood and antenna acted as glue and sealed the suit and prevent most of his air from escaping. Watney pulls out the antenna in a painful procedure. He removes the remaining piece with forceps, and then he stitches it. As he is left alone on the planet, he sits down to record a video log in which he describes the scenario. He is still alive, but he is unable to communicate with Earth or Hermes, and says that it may surprise his crew and the world, and sadly tells that the next manned mission won't launch for 4 years. And with the food supply for him and the other 5 crew members, which is designed to facilitate for 31 days, and would have enough food for almost a year or slightly longer if he rations, and he explains that if he somehow doesn't die of thirst and oxygen, he'd probably run out of food supply, as he has to wait 4 years for next manned mission. As a result, Watney decides that on a world where nothing grows, he must cultivate enough food for 3 years. While using the washroom, he notices the vacuum flush. He develops an idea of using their feces as the fertilizer, and then he develops a plan to grow potatoes. Fortunately, he is a botanist. Watney, after a few Martian days later, plants potato inside the habitual using Martian soil and the crew's feces as a fertilizer. As he lays, he thinks about a problem and says that he has created 125 square meter soil, and for every cubic meter of soil he requires 40 liters of water, and says he knows the recipe to produce water. He just need to burn the hydrogen with oxygen. Mark then collects the hydrazine rocket fuel in a cylinder, and according to his calculation, he fires hydrazine rocket fuel to produce water, because water is produced as a byproduct of the process. And as he narrates the whole process, he sees a few drops of water being produced, but soon it catches fire and he moderately explodes the hydrazine on his first try, burning his clothes and hair in the process. Watney points out the reason why NASA doesn't use pure hydrogen on their mission is due to its explosive nature. On his second try, he wears his EVA helmet and fireproof sheet to protect himself, as hydrazine is highly explosive, and to his luck he succeeds. Mark continuously monitors the vent and wipes his hand on the water produced on the wall of the plastic tent. Back on Earth, the director of NASA Teddy Sanders gives a speech at Mark's memorial service. The director of Mars mission Vincent Kapoor meets with Sanders after Mark's memorial service and discuss another mission on Mars, and Kapoor requests a satellite image of Mark's body, to which Sanders declines, and as it could be bad for the company, it could decrease the donation from the Congress. Meanwhile, Mindy Park receives a satellite report, and upon accessing it, she is shocked and notices a change in the landings of Ares 3, to which she contacts Kapoor and tells him that Mark is still alive. Back on Mars, Mark continues with his video recordings and chooses a rover to get to the Schiaparelli crater, which will be the landing site for Ares 4 in 4 years, as he continues to work on his food supply. Because the landing site is thousands of miles away, the battery-powered rover is unable to travel the entire distance, so he modifies the rover by adding extra solar cells and an additional battery. But still, the rover requires to be charged constantly due to Mark using the battery for heater, and at night Mark almost froze to death. So to solve the heating problem, Mark dug up the plutonium pod and attached it to the rover. The plutonium pod that carried the crew to Mars in their first spaceship now acts as a heat source inside the rover's cabin, saving battery power. Back on Earth, NASA monitors every moment of Watney, and it's seen that Mark was taking the rover for longer trips and leaving the safe zone. Kapoor suspects that he is trying to reach the landing site of Ares 4 and is trying to find a way to contact the Earth. In order to contact NASA, Watney uses the rover to locate a Pathfinder probe that ceased transmitting in 1997. He unearths the outdated probe from the sand, lays out its solar panels to power the batteries, and finds that it still functions. He is able to notify NASA that he is still alive by using handwritten signs for the Pathfinder's camera. Kapoor and his colleagues at the Jet Propulsion Lab, who constructed the Pathfinders, brings another Pathfinder out of storage to hear the message. When Watney asks if his signal is being received, they are able to communicate with him by first moving the Mars Pathfinder's camera to point at yes or no signs, and then by panning around a hexadecimal clock that Watney had scratched out on the ground nearby his Pathfinder. In order for the rover to send text back to Earth, NASA instruct him on how to hack the rover's operating system. When Watney, who can now type chat-style messages, inquires about the Hermes crew's reaction to the news that he is not dead, Kapoor regrettably replies that the crew is not aware. Watney answers by using inappropriate words. Meanwhile, the crew of Hermes has spent the previous few months silently returning to Earth. Mitch Henderson, the flight director of Ares 3, contacts the crew and lets them know that Watney is still alive and that NASA has kept this information from them for the past 2 months in order to prevent them from being distracted from their mission. Henderson explains to them that Watney has emphasized numerous times that it wasn't their fault and they had good cause to believe he was dead, but the revelation simply makes them feel angry and guilty. By Martian Day 868, the NASA team determines that they can get to Watney. In a little over 900 days, the food he is cultivating and the provisions in the HAB will be depleted. Sanders worries that the error margin is too tiny. When the habitat's outdated airlock explodes and decompresses while Watney is inside it, his helmet cracks and leaks, and things start to go wrong for him back on Mars. He returns to the habitat after sealing the cracks with duct tape to find his potato crop frozen and lifeless. He now estimates that with less food, he can only survive for about 300 Martian days, or a little longer if he rations. NASA and Jet Propulsion Lab put in extra effort and sent a probe to resupply Watney. They skip routine checks in order to launch on time, but shortly after launch, the probe's trajectory changes dramatically, it drifts off course, and explodes. Meanwhile, in China, Zhu Tao and Guo Ming, two directors from the Chinese National Space Administration, see the explosion and talk about assisting NASA by providing their proprietary booster rocket technology to launch a supply vehicle. Zhu Tao responds to Guo Ming's question about why NASA hasn't already sought for their assistance by pointing out that it's a top-secret program and that NASA has no awareness of it. They decide to reach out to NASA and offer their booster in the spirit of global scientific cooperation. An absent-minded, but brilliant astrodynamicist named Rich Purnell comes up with an idea to send the Hermes spacecraft back to Mars to retrieve Watney by accelerating it around the Earth. The Hermes will be restocked for its lengthy journey thanks to the Chinese rocket. Sanders refuses this plan as it puts the 5 Hermes crew members' lives in danger and causes it to last hundreds of days longer than necessary, but Henderson communicates the plan and Purnell's path calculations to the crew covertly. The crew discusses it and agrees that the covert arrival of the plan indicates that the idea has been rejected by NASA officials. They believe that if they return to Mars, the 3 civilians will never be permitted to fly another mission and the other 2 military personnel, Lewis and Martinez, will be prosecuted for mutiny. Still, they all decide to return for Watney when Lewis requests a unanimous decision. Using a cryptic message that reads, "Rich Purnell is a steely-eyed missile man," Johansson hacks the Hermes computers to prevent NASA from taking control and they shift course. Sanders is upset with Henderson, whom he believes sent Hermes the idea. Henderson won't admit to his acts, but he also won't deny them. Sanders says that while maintaining NASA's operations is his first objective, Congress is very aware of public sentiment and the negative press that would follow if Purnell's plan failed, as it would probably result in NASA's budget being cut for years to come. He requests for Henderson's resignation. Later, he is compelled to reveal that NASA is sending Hermes back to Mars to save Watney. On Mars, 7 months pass. Watney's teeth are falling out, he's gained a lot of facial hair, and he's lost a lot of weight. He has begun to lose faith in his ability to live and be saved. In a video log, he requests that Commander Lewis inform his parents of his situation. Watney is given instructions by NASA to make significant changes to the rover, which he does confusedly. After spending 461 Martian days at the Ares 3 location, he packs up the rover and departs. He then drives to the Ares IV MAV, which was landed on Mars far in advance of the Ares IV mission. A 32-kilometer drive must be made through an unfriendly and trackless Martian region. He sleeps and uses solar panels to recharge the rover's batteries for 13 hours each day. During his journey, he makes the argument that Mars is legitimately considered to be international waters, which means that maritime law applies to it because it cannot be claimed by any government on Earth. Invading the MAV will make him a space pirate because he hasn't had NASA's formal authority to do so and can't until after takeoff. Captain Blondebeard is the title he wants to go by. Additionally, Mark rambles on about how he's the first person to witness the Martian terrain and how he's somewhat in awe of it. The Hermes then heads back to Mars after circling Earth and gathering the supplies. With a delay of 12 minutes, no one on Earth can assist by radio, so NASA and the rest of the world wait with anticipation. In order for the MAF to be light enough to reach Hermes orbit, Watney must remove 5,000 kilograms of weight from it. He removes all of the navigation and control equipment, as well as all of the seats, and he covers the nose cone airlock, which is the single heaviest and vital structural component, with a tarp. Watney is launched into orbit by Martinez, who controls the MAV remotely. To reach the Hermes spaceship, the MAV comes up too low. In order to equal speeds and still reach Watney, Vogel builds a hastily constructed sugar and oxygen explosive to blow open the front hatch and cause escaping air to slow the enormous ship down. Lewis herself makes the decision to reach Watney, but she is unable to get near enough. Watney makes a hole in the palm of his glove and uses the jet of escaping air to fly towards Lewis. He exclaims with joy, like Iron Man, but misses her with his lack of control. He bumps against the rope, which, as a result of his momentum, winds around him and Lewis, and the crew manages to pull them in. People throughout the world applaud as Lewis informs NASA that they have Watney. The group gives Watney a hug and makes fun of his stinky smell after not taking a shower for several months. Watney starts his first day as an instructor to aspiring astronauts when he returns to Earth around a year later. He explains his struggles on Mars and confirms that he did grow food from his own waste, but he makes a lighthearted joke about not wanting to bring up that part of the expedition again. In case things don't work out for them, he advises them to either accept their fate or start dealing with issues, since that's how you survive, by dealing with issues one at a time. In the post-credit scene, protagonists are shown years later as they watch the launch of Ares V, whose commander is Martinez. Guoming, Zhu and Kapoor watch from NASA together with Montrose, Park, and Sanders. Henderson is retired and playing golf with his kid. Vogel is at home with his family while Lewis is watching at home with her husband. Beck and Johansson wed and are now observing from the hospital with their newborn. The end. Thank you for watching. Hope you liked the video. If yes, then please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more movie recap light videos.